But basically what I was saying is, like, objectively, I really don't care if a white girl has dreads. I really don't. That's not the issue that I have. It's not, you know, it's not even that. It's more of, in the current society that we live in, when black people are punished for having these hairstyles and you get away with having it, then that's kind of, you know, so I personally, like, when I see a white person with dreads, I have a very hard time believing that they're on my side. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like even if you could have every justification in the world, the fact that a black person can't exist with this hairstyle without facing a bunch of crap for it, I think someone who's an ally would see that, respect that, and be like, hey, guess what? I'm not gonna do that with my hair. I'm not gonna do that with whatever.
Well, guys, today I'm here to talk to you about a different type of privilege. Can you guess which one it is? White privilege. White privilege is basically the privilege to be blissfully ignorant of the racial plights of, in this case, black people. White people don't have to worry about being eyed and stared at in stores and banks, you know, afraid that people are going to think that they're about to stick up the place or take something out of the store. Being judged by their name on a resume, having their intelligence judged unfairly just because their name may be Shaniqua, Kwavanzane, whatever.
Most people that have guns don't use them on other people. You said if you have a gun, you're going to use it.
Well,
you don't.
What's that old saying? If you have a gun, you better be able to use it?
Yes. Most people are overwhelmingly good.
Okay, yeah, well, but most people have a gun. 350 million Americans, there are 310 million guns.
Right, that doesn't mean that most people have a gun. It doesn't distribute exactly that way.
But, you know, people are blaming violence in movies and videos
well, that's
on
insane.
this.
That's insane.
No, really?
Shut the fuck up!
No, what is it called? Art of War, Man of War? What do the kids play?
Call of Duty.
We don't allow that in our house. Really? So busy buying Call of Duty. There needs to be more hugs in households.
Those aren't mutually exclusive. Well, nothing in Call of Duty says you can't hug your family.
Well, you know what? This boy's favorite game pen was Call of Duty.
Yes, and many peaceful people. You're doing the same thing. Call of Duty is the most popular game there is. Everyone's playing it, so of course bad people are going to play it too.
Yeah.
To try to blame Shakespeare and the violence in Shakespeare and the violence in art for violence that happens in the real world is something that's been tried for years and is always wrong. People must take responsibility. We must stop blaming society and actually blame the perpetrator.
Yeah, you know what?
Call of Duty is something that young people like and enjoy, and it's a game.
I think
and most of those people aren't violent. Most of the people aren't violent. Most of the people aren't violent.
We need to take responsibility for our own houses.
And we have to stop disliking our children. We attack comic books. We attack monster movies. Now we're attacking video games. Love our children and know that they
take care of your household.
Let them play.
Jamie Foxx is one of the only celebrities
that Jamie Foxx is wrong.
Well, he says we cannot turn our backs and say that violence in films or anything that we do doesn't have some sort of influence. It does. I go along with that.
Blame the killers. Why not blame the killers?
Well, some of the killers learn their killing through movies.
Blame the killers, not the artists. Why are you blaming artists for something that bad people did?
And
Shakespeare is not a bad person. He wrote beautiful stuff. It has suicide, it has murder, and it tells us something about our hearts. And people who watch Shakespeare don't kill. And Call of Duty is art. It is not some sort of propaganda thing. And that's an easy way out.
How about this? This is a case of violence with guns, video games, and mental health. Now, here's a kid who was borderline autistic with Asperger's. They have a lot of social problems.
But they don't know how to... No violent problems.
No. Autistic kids are usually victims. My point is that if you sit this kid in a room all day shooting people, if they have no social skills...
How do you know that?
Because it's been... Well,
he had no social skills. It's been reported.
There's no evidence that Asperger's syndrome people go violent from playing games.
No, this is not about Asperger's.
You have not one data point of evidence on that.
I'm not saying that.
Well, you just said it.
Well, let me try to be clearer.
Please.
Here's a person who has troubles figuring out what's social and what's not. And he's inundated with shoot, 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 shoot. And then a little plan comes across, well, maybe I'll just go to school and shoot people.
No, you've just done cause and effect where it doesn't exist.
There's no guilt. There's no guilt. There's no conscience.
That's not true that there's no guilt and no conscience.
He wouldn't make eye contact with his barber.
Please don't tear those people apart. I have good friends with Asperger's. They have conscience. They have empathy. All of that is not true. You're spreading lies about people who are part of our society and that we need to love and take care of and share.
With respect to the race war, there will be a battle between black and white. And I fast and pray today that God, Allah, in his good time, remove all white folks from the planet Earth.
We must love and protect each other. We must love and protect each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We ain't gonna stop.
We gonna win. We not gonna stop.
In our families, calling out the violence of the racist police.
Y'all can't even accept realness. That's why I hate y'all. Y'all can't even be honest and say, damn, the man got a 60-year-old black son with an afro. He might get stopped for no. We hate him. He doesn't support. Somebody shot. Not. Look, let's get him in the pit. Let's get him to the hospital square. You do this. Clear off that block. How many? This is how they stand in East New York. This is how they stand in Browns.
Summertime, they're going to show their muscle.
Calling out the violence of the racist police, and we ain't gonna stop.
Arrest! I'm dead! Arrest! I'm right here!
Hey! Hey!
You better stop that shit! You better stop that shit! Hands up!
Damn! The fuck is that shooting?
This is not your space. This is a space for black and brown lives. And we're here to talk about police brutality. You want to talk that Trump chart shit? Go to Trump rally. Go to Trump Tower. You're not going to do that here. You're not going to do that here. You're not going to do that. Racist out! 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 Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Fuck you, you white supremacists! You don't give a fuck about black lives! You don't give a fuck about black lives! You filthy fucking lawyer! You don't give a fuck about black lives! Fuck you, fucking homophobic piece of shit! Fucking fat shit! Black lives matter! 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 What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Take this out. Don't give him no reason. We ain't give him no fucking reason. But you see that fucking reason. Calm down. Calm down. Don't even give him no reason. Let's not give them no reason. Our president is a reason. Understand all the. Let's give them nothing extra. That's all they want. Justifiable, man. Calm down. Listen. Say the police no problem. Say that. Exactly. I ain't done nothing. The police no problem. I ain't done nothing.
8 o'clock, hundreds stopped traffic on both lanes near Lexington. Police blocked off 8 miles of 94 between downtown St. Paul and Highway 280.
We don't care. We're here fighting. It's time to make a stand. We're going to make a stand. We're going to make it in front of the world and let them know we're tired.
For more than 4 hours, demonstrators ignored repeated calls by police to leave the area.
If you remain on the interstate, you will be subject to arrest.
Around 10 o'clock, police released smoke bombs to disperse the crowds, though most continued to stay. Over the demonstration, our cameras captured protesters throwing several items at officers, glass bottles and rocks, even a metal bar from a nearby construction site. We saw one officer getting help from other law enforcement after he appears to have been injured. In all, 21 officers were hurt.
Stop throwing rocks and bottles at the police officers.
For most of the evening, police and protesters left distance between each other. Yet there were tense moments when police used pepper spray to back up the crowd. Officers again used smoke bombs to force protesters out of the area. By midnight, dozens were taken into custody, but the evening wasn't over.
Fascists out! 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 Fascists out!
Country! This God called me to be grateful for police killing my brothers and sisters, to be grateful to be scared to walk out the door every day, to be grateful that my mom won't leave the damn house! You know what I'm grateful for? You know what I'm grateful for? To be alive! And that doesn't happen for us! We're scared to live! Why can't we be black in America? We can't be black, we can't be human beings anywhere we go! Because there's so much violence and so much hate in this world! I'm afraid to be here right now! And that shouldn't happen!
You know what? I have a dream. And I'm afraid that one day my dream will be ended, but some trigger-happy cop who will kill me because of my skin color. Should I wake up in the morning and pray to God that I don't die today? Should I wake up in the morning and fear that I won't realize what my potential really is? You know, I'm on holiday, and I escaped from my group of my sister over here. Because we are tired of seeing what is happening around the world. That's right. It's not just in the States. It's not just in the UK. That's right. It's all around the world. That's right. Too many people care. That's right. But the problem is they care behind their phones. No one is willing to step outside and do what's right. Silence is siding with the...
With his sister calling for peace.
Don't bring the violence here and the ignorance here.
Milwaukee police say they made multiple arrests overnight. With his sister calling for peace.
Don't bring the violence here and the ignorance here.
With his sister calling for peace.
Y'all burning down shit we need in our community. Take that shit to the suburbs. Burn that shit down. We need our shit. Y'all want to hurt somebody, take that shit farther out. Don't bring it here. Don't bring the violence here and the ignorance here. We need everything we fucking got.
With his sister calling for peace.
Ain't no calm no crowd down. Calm the crowd Y'all down. Think we gonna get reckless out here? It's gonna get way worse. Until we get justice, until motherfuckers start feeling where we coming from, it's gonna hit everywhere.
With his sister calling for peace.
And y'all want us to sit here and be quiet, get welfare checks, and get SSI. No, fuck them buildings. I hope them motherfuckers burn down tonight.
Jamila, we'll start with you because the White House yesterday came out and made a pretty bold statement saying President Obama considers the attack on Dallas police a hate crime. You know, the killer specifically mentioned he wanted to kill white people, especially white police officers, according to law enforcement there. How do you feel about the president defining this as a hate crime?
You know, I have to say I would not describe hate crime as the most comfortable word choice considering these circumstances. There's so much that we do not know about what took place, what motivated this person. We only have the one account of law enforcement. We haven't had the opportunity to really look into his history in a meaningful way. When we use a phrase like hate crime, we're typically referring to crimes against people of color, people of various religious groups, LGBT people, people who have been historically attacked, abused, or disenfranchised on the basis of their identity. To now extend that to the majority group and a group of people that has a history with African Americans that has been abusive, and we can apply that to either police officers or to Caucasians, I think gets into very tricky territory. So I'd be curious to know if he was referring to this as a hate crime because he singled them out by race or attempted to single them out by race, or because they were police officers.
Steve, do you agree with that? The fact that this man was targeting white people, according to what he told police, does that fit the definition of a hate crime?
It absolutely fits the definition of the hate crime. You can't just say that only certain groups are allowed to be hated. Only certain groups can have crimes designated as hate crimes against them. That's racism. What you're doing here is saying that the actual truth of the matter is that hate crimes are defined as a crime against a specific race, doesn't list them, gender preference group, or membership in an organization. That's how it's defined. You can't just say if you're white, nobody can commit a hate crime against you. And this guy said, I'm doing it because you're white, and I'm doing it because you're cops.
Before we dive into a set of facts and statistics that may boggle your mind, it's my duty to read you your Milo-approved Miranda rights. You have the right to controversial opinions and speech. You have the right to confront and to disagree with, to rebut and to question opinions that don't match your own. You have the right to do all of that without being told that you are violating a safe space. You have the right to reject the brainwashing forced upon you by professors that make Obama look like the aforesaid Che Guevara. And most importantly, you have the right to worship your dangerous faggot. Now, I'm not a real policeman, but no, I know. I have had some policemen in me. Sorry, I'll stop. It's cheap. It's cheap. It's cheap. You should stop laughing. It just encourages me. That's not even in here. I'm just... But I do recognize that blue lives matter. Blue lives matter. Black Lives Matter doesn't really care about black lives. It's, as we'll discuss shortly, more of a movement for attention, money, and, like most activism, more money. To achieve these goals, they focus their energies on cases of black men killed by the police. Well, the work of criminologist Dr. Richard Johnson of the University of Toledo explains just how futile this is. And some of this stuff is tough to listen to. Some of this stuff is not pleasant. It's not the kind of thing that you want to discuss over cocktails, but it's important to understand the problem if you're going to fix it, which Black Lives Matter definitely can't. Based on 2012 numbers, it would take 40 years worth of blacks killed by police to equal the total number of blacks murdered by other blacks in a single year. Right. Less than 400 people a year are killed by cops. 61% of them are white men. 32% are black males. Black men are not killed out of proportion when you consider they're much more likely to interact with police. People are killed by police about as often as they're struck by lightning, but I don't see many protests about storms. Black males are 58% of those killed legally by private citizens in self-defense. And you think, aha, we've got you on something. Except 75% of them were killed by other blacks. FBI statistics on murder lay bare the real threat to black lives in America, and that is other blacks. Black men are about 6.5% of the US population, but they commit 52% of all murders. That has dipped to about 40% in recent years. Black men overwhelmingly murder other black people, and white people overwhelmingly murder other white people. So just like abuse and harassment on the internet, this isn't really a racial issue, like that isn't really a gendered issue. Looking at overall violent crime, blacks are 27% more likely to attack whites than vice versa, and 8 times more likely to attack Hispanics. This is the shocking number I hope you take away from my visit. 90% of blacks that die of murder die at the hands of other black people, and that's from the FBI homicide report, 90%. We're not here to talk about why this happens, why 74% of black children are raised without fathers per Health and Human Services, and why the government seems intent on continuing a cycle of destruction within the black community. My message is simple. Black lives don't matter to black